Good morning and Happy New Year. I hope you all had a wonderful Christmas break. I know that I did, and it seems like a little bit of a shocker that we're already back to school, but I'm really hoping that 2021 is going to be an awesome year for us. And so I hope you're coming to it with sort of renewed energy and eagerness to learn about the things that we have to do. So we're going to start off today with just a review about the Renaissance. That's where we left off the last time. And so you have a sheet and it should say the Renaissance Review, Ockeghem and Josquin, and those are the two composers we're going to learn about today. So let's read together. The Renaissance was a time of rebirth. It literally means rebirth in Europe, beginning in Italy, which lasted from about 1450 to 1600. And remember that that time frame is quite a bit narrower than the last time frame when we studied about the Middle Ages. During this time, there was renewed interest in ancient Greek and Roman culture. Works like literary works were being translated, including books about music, and scholars, artists, writers, and musicians were greatly influenced. Because the Greek and Roman cultures were pre-Christian, one of the influences was away from sacred music. That doesn't mean that there wasn't any sacred music. It just means that where the influence had been very heavily on sacred music before, now people were starting to be interested in other things. Think of some of the other events of the Renaissance to get yourself in the mood of this period. Christopher Columbus ushered in the age of exploration. Leonardo da Vinci painted The Last Supper. Michelangelo sculpted the David. Henry VIII was the King of England, and Martin Luther started the Reformation. We'll talk about him a little bit more later. Not today, though. According to the Concise History of Western Music, which is one of the texts that I'm using for this information, we may think of the musical Renaissance as more of a general cultural movement and state of mind than as a specific set of musical techniques. So the music reflected just what was going on in the whole culture of that time. There really isn't a single style of music in the Renaissance, so we'll study the major composers of this time period in the next few lessons and see what different styles they wrote in. This is a really important development. The music printing. Because remember, before, music wasn't even written down, and people just repeated it to each other by rote. And then eventually they did start writing it down, but that's quite a tedious process, having to write it down by hand. But now the printing press, which began to be used right around 1450, which was the beginning of this time period, was a wonderful invention for musicians. No longer did music have to be written out by hand. The first collection of polyphonic music was printed in 1501, and now music was more widely available and had less errors in it, because if you were that person that was responsible for writing out every sheet of music by hand, that would get a little bit tiresome. Next up, we're going to learn about one of the great composers of the Renaissance period, Johannes Ockeghem.